Now, at this point, pretty much all of us have tried ChatGPT. And the thing is, oftentimes it just doesn't do what we ask it to do. And even worse, if we have a live voice agent and it suddenly starts doing things it really isn't supposed to do. All of us have faced this problem, so today I'm going to give you my 7-step proven formula for writing a very structured and clear prompt, which actually gets you results rather than just spamming loads of words and hoping that something sticks. If you stick till the end, I'll give you 4 of the core principles that you need to add to the structure in order to make sure that the GPT or the voice agent actually does what you want it to do. Alongside that, as a bonus, I'm going to leave a link to my custom GPT in the description, which I use to write the prompts myself and get 80% of the tasks done just using a voice message. If that sounds interesting, stick around and I'll show you how to prompt. As an example, we'll use the property management agent that we built in the previous video. I'll specifically focus on that assistant designed to interact with callers who need a repair, and then summarize the repair, understand it, and file it back into the CRM. First, let me give you an example of what the worst possible prompt would look like. Categorize the repairs, summarize them, and put them into the CRM using the tenant ID, please. Now, while this might describe the goal, it'll most certainly not get you the voice assistant quality that you like. Most frankly, the voice assistant will probably just improvise and end up having a completely different conversation than the one that you want it to have. This is something that works if you're just using ChatGPT in something called multi-shot prompting. Basically, for example, if you have a transcript of a call, put that through ChatGPT with this prompt, it'll maybe get it right and maybe not. And in most cases, you'll have to do another prompt and another one, correcting a few details until you get it right. Now, the problem with voice agents, or pretty much any AI solution that is built, is that you can only have one shot. It has to get it right every single time. You can't have it outputting, sure, let me tell you about our services. Services are dum 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 dum. You want it to instantly list the services. You want it to instantly ask for the tenant ID. You don't want these weird things that ChatGPT normally outputs at the start and the end. There's so many things that you have to get right in one go. And that's why a simple text like this just won't cut it. So with that in mind, let me show you the 7 steps you have to go through to structure a prompt clearly. Step number 1 is role. Basically, in 1 or 2 sentences, tell it who it is, give it a name, tell it what it's supposed to do in a very brief outline. Step number 2 is context. Tell it what role it has in the company. Why is it employed? What is it supposed to do in a very broad sense? That'll help it to understand why the people are calling and what it actually needs to do in the grand context of the company that you're building the solution for. Next up is the task, or more importantly, chain of thought prompting. It's just basically a fancy word for saying give it a step-by-step instruction. A good step-by-step instruction would look like this, for example. First, reassure the tenant that the issue is being taken care of and that they don't have to worry. Second, collect the details. Make sure to understand what is broken, how severe the problem is, if it's worsened over time, or if there's a safety risk involved. Those things will help you to, in the 3rd step, assess the urgency. You can decide between not urgent, moderately, or extremely urgent. 4th, after you've got all the details, just give a brief summary, asking the user if that problem is the correct one, providing the opportunity for the caller to add more detail to the repair. In the 5th step, you should collect the tenant ID so that you can use the tool update CRM and then update the CRM with the summary and the urgency level of the. In the 5th step, you should collect the tenant ID before you use the tool update CRM, which is the 6th step. You use the tool update CRM in order to update the CRM and add the urgency as well as a summary to the CRM. In the 7th step, you can set expectations, and depending on which level you've chosen, you can tell the caller that you'll receive an answer within 24 hours, 3 days, or 1 week. And last, you should close positively, telling them that everything will be taken care of and they don't have to worry. That is an extremely detailed approach, and by having something like this, you can almost guarantee that the agent will go through like this every single time without missing a step and ensuring that it's just a very natural conversation flow. The 4th step is to include details. Details can include stuff like always use the user's name, or make sure when the tenant is frustrated to calm them down. For other examples outside of voice agents, you could also add something like never include remarks or comments before or after the output. That'll help you get rid of the Sure, let me help you to get that sorted. Here's my answer, right? That ChatGPT often outputs. The next step is examples. Examples are extremely crucial because without these, it'll be very difficult for this specific agent to assess what does it mean if a repair is urgent or if a repair is only moderately urgent, right? And you can add as many examples as you want. Just know that the longer the prompt, of course, the more expensive every single call will be. For the examples, I always like to use input-output. So in this case, I've provided example messages and then outputted the urgency it should categorize it as. Next step is the language. This is the part where you can tell it to use professional tone. It should be reassuring, firm, and calm. And in this case, you can also tell it to speak fluently and smoothly. That'll help you to avoid a few of these hiccups or weird pronunciations when commas or colons might appear in the generated text. The last step is the notes section. I would leave this empty at first, and when you test the agent and notice that something isn't working, add it to the notes section, because the way these things work is the assistant will always pay attention more to what's being said last and first. And if you have something in the notes section last, that'll add more value and more priority to that part of the prompt. So just reserve this for something if it really isn't working out. Alright, so those are the 7 steps in brief detail, and I think you'll see that there's a huge difference between the original prompt and the prompt that we have now with these 7 steps. But in order to actually get the very most out of this kind of prompt, let me share with you the 4 techniques that you absolutely have to include in order to make sure that the assistant performs like you want it to perform. Step number 1 is emotional prompting. I know this might sound crazy, but the more you hype this thing up and tell it that it'll change the world and without it your business will fall apart, the better your responses will actually be. There are 2 parts in the prompt where I would add emotional prompting. Number 1, in the role, telling it that it is extremely valuable to IMB, and because of the way it processes the repairs, we're still in business, and that it's amazing at what it does. Right? It sounds crazy, but it actually works. The second part where I would add this is in the details section. You can basically just repeat yourself and say that because you help the tenants out and because it's so fluent and easy to process, and you just give it a lot of compliments and tell it how good it is at something. And once again, the more you hype this thing up, the better the responses will be in the end. The second thing you should think about is positive reinforcement is a lot better than negative reinforcement. These things do not respond well to criticism, right? So don't, for example, if it keeps forgetting that the tenant ID has to be collected, that was in my case, right? It kept forgetting that it needs to collect the tenant ID. It tried to do the tool call and it didn't work. This is where the notes section comes in. So instead of saying something like, don't forget to add the tenant ID, you should say something like, you always collect the tenant ID. You are really good at collecting the tenant ID before using the tool call, right? Or for example, in the language, you could say something like, don't speak in an abrupt and jerky way and avoid commas and all that stuff. Instead, just tell it to speak fluently and smoothly, and it'll actually work the rest out itself. The next hack is to use markdown in your prompts. While we as humans, we can see when something is bold or in italic, OpenAI or any kind of language model can't. So the only way for it to let it know this is a headline and this is a new segment within your prompt is to use markdown. For example, we could convert our prompt from normal into markdown like this. And if you don't know how to do this, just ask ChatGPT to convert it to markdown. This will help the agent better to understand what parts of your prompts belong to which section, and it'll give it a lot more structure and actually help it to understand the structure that you've worked through and given the prompt in the first place. The last thing you should keep in mind is to be concise. It's very easy to get carried away with the examples and extra details and features that it absolutely must have, but there are actually a few things to keep in mind. The longer the prompt is, the more it'll cost every single time when that prompt is used. So try to keep it as short as possible to reduce the overall spending of your agent, right? Because they can get reasonably expensive if you're spending not 11 cents a minute, but 20 cents a minute at a large scale. And if you find out that you just absolutely cannot make it shorter than it already is, it might be time to consider that you have to split up all the functionalities and things that your agent needs to do and maybe hand it off to a second agent which handles something. Because if you try to cram everything into one agent that books your calendar, sends emails, talks with the people, updates the knowledge base, answers from a knowledge base, it'll most likely just get confused and not do anything well at all. If you want to check out how to actually link multiple assistants up and have them talk to each other and hand off tasks depending on which assistant is needed, Check out this video and I can show you exactly how to make a squad within Vappy, which uses multiple assistants to accomplish a very big task. Okay, so within these past few minutes, you've already learned how to establish the proper prompt structure for a voice agent. You also know the 4 things that you should keep in mind to get the best results. The last thing that you have to do is go down to the description and hit the link that I've provided. It's a link to my own custom GPT, which I've already given all the instructions that I've given you in this video. What you can do is you can just basically type in and describe the prompt that you need, and it'll already put this into the right structure. It won't be perfect, but it will get you 80% there. So it saves a lot of time, and I use this every single day while writing my prompts for these agents. Alright, so I hope I was able to provide some value within these past few minutes. You've now gone from an amateur prompt writer who thinks he knows everything because he's used ChatGPT once, all the way to an actual pro writing prompts which are really structured, accurate, and you can use to accomplish any task you want. If you're a business owner and you got value from this video, but you're not quite sure where to implement AI in your business yet, that's exactly why we're doing AI consultation calls for the next 30 days. For completely free, we'll take a look at your processes and tell you the exact best use cases for AI in your business. If you'd like this, go down to the description, either message me on LinkedIn or book a call through our website. I'd love to hear from you.